All right, so Kevin Warsh is crushing the price of gold. And this is crazy because he's the exact same guy that's going to send gold to a price that almost nobody sees coming. I'm not going to do the YouTuber thing and tease you with the price until the end. It's $10,000. I think that gold is eventually going to go to $10,000, but it needs to make a pit stop first, which means it could go down a fair bit more. Because Warsh isn't done yet. And why? Well, look, Warsh wrapped up his first meeting as the new head of the Federal Reserve, and gold has been bleeding out ever since. Silver too. Every headline is screaming that gold is dead again. But the thing with gold is that nobody can really kill it. I mean, they can beat it down, they can hold it back, but gold always wins in the end. So if you hold gold, silver, or if you have a pension that you'd like to exist 10 years from now, stick around because what we talk about today is going to be super important. So if you don't know me, my name's Nick. I've been a professional investor and unprofessional trader for 25 years. None of this is financial advice, and this is not an inducement to buy or sell any assets. And as always, do not take financial advice from some random dude on YouTube. Right, so let's get into it. First, quickly, who even is Kevin Warsh, in case you don't know? Warsh is Trump's new man at the Fed. He has the most powerful job in all of finance. He's the head of the Federal Reserve. So look, everyone expected him to walk in and slash interest rates as his first thing on the job, because that's what Trump has been screaming for. Instead, he did the opposite. No, he didn't do the opposite. Technically, he just didn't do anything. No cuts, and he hinted that they might even raise rates before the year is out. Then he did something that no Fed chairman has done in 14 years. When it came time to tell the market where he sees rates going, he refused. His exact words were, "I did not submit a dot for me." A dot is essentially an opinion on where he thinks rates are going. They call it a dot. It's a dot plot. It doesn't matter. So him not submitting a dot is one of the things that's crushing gold right now. But there are three separate things hitting gold all at once. Let me break them down for you. So everyone's staring at interest rates. Did he cut? Did he hold? Is he about to hike? All that stuff. But that's the magic trick, right? While you're watching this hand, the other hand is quietly reaching for $6.7 trillion. And I'll explain what I mean by $6.7 trillion. So the Fed owns a giant pile of government bonds, government debt, mortgage bonds, the lot, right? So right now, that pile is worth about $6.7 trillion. Where did the money come from? They created the money out of thin air and bought those bonds with it. So think about how crazy this is. They printed trillions of dollars and then they bought government bonds with it. Essentially, they lent money to themselves. Governments are such crooks. It's insane. When I printed money, I got arrested. I didn't. I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, go back before 2008, and that whole pile was under $1 trillion, not 6.7. Then every time there was a major crisis, they printed money and lent it to themselves to get out of that crisis. In 2008, it ballooned. In 2020, it went absolutely vertical, and it topped out around $9 trillion. It's been going down a little bit since. It's now at 6.7, as I've said. And even that is bigger than the economy of Japan, which is obscene. Now, one man wants to start selling it off piece by piece. But the problem is that all of that money sloshing around the system right now is kind of holding everything up. So picture the entire financial system as a bathtub. I know that's crazy, but bear with me here, right? That $6.7 trillion is the water in the bathtub. Your stocks, your house prices, your pension, they're all floating around in that bathtub. You pull the plug and everything sinks together. Now, Warsh has walked in and he said, I want to pull the plug. And here's why that kills gold, at least over the short term. When the Fed sells those bonds, it sucks cash straight back out of the economy. So money gets tighter, the dollar gets stronger. And gold hates a strong dollar more than anything else, and it gets crushed temporarily, like I said. It's the same as if they hiked rates, except he never has to actually touch rates. He never has to hike them to do this. And this hits you even if you've never touched an ounce of gold in your life. When they drain that bathtub, it isn't just gold that drops. Your shares wobble, your pension wobbles, the whole lot. It just gets tighter and lower altogether. Gold is just kind of the canary in the coal mine. When it's getting hammered by a strong dollar, it's screaming that money is being pulled out of the system somewhere. So that's the weapon. It's weapon number one that Kevin Warsh is wielding. And it's a pretty big weapon, to be fair. The second thing is the dot plot that we already talked about. I'll explain that a little bit more though. So for 14 years, every Fed chairman has told the market roughly where they see rates heading. It's kind of like a comfort blanket for the market. It quietly promises that cheaper money is on the way if things ever get too rough. And that promise is what the whole everything rally that we've been experiencing, the market going up, has been leaning on. Warsh looked at the markets and basically told them that they're on their own now. He said, figure it out for yourself. And make no mistake, by the way, this is deliberate. Warsh has spent years arguing that the Fed handcuffs itself by telling everyone its plans in advance, which I kind of agree with, to be fair. I mean, look, I don't like Kevin Warsh. I don't like any Fed chairman, really, but I kind of agree with him on that point. So he basically said, nah, I'm not doing that. And he essentially blindfolded the market. That's how I like to think about it. And that uncertainty alone has sent money running into the dollar and straight out of gold. Now, the third thing has nothing to do with Warsh, and hardly anyone's really talking about it, but for most of the last year, gold had a panic bit under it. The tariff wars, then the Iran war, all that fear sent people sprinting into gold for safety. And I know you're going to say that gold dumped after the Iran war, but I'm talking about the lead up to the Iran war. The fear of the war usually pumps gold, and then after it starts, it dumps. Anyway, so that fear is cooled off right now. The tariffs, they're old news. I mean, who knows what's happening with them. The war scare, that's faded into the background. I mean, no one cares really about Iran anymore. It's kind of out of the news cycle for the most part, unfortunately, but it is. And when that panic leaves the room, that safe haven money, it kind of just leaves with it. Gold loses one of its biggest props. And at the exact same moment that Kevin Warsh is kicking all the rest of them away. So there you have it. A tightening weapon, a Fed hiding its hand, and the fear draining out, all landing at the same time for gold. And, you know, it's affecting the price of gold. Why wouldn't it? And that's exactly how you get to the first price I think we're going to with gold, which is around about $3,000. I think these three forces are going to drag gold down to $3,000. Now, look, it probably won't be exactly $3,000. That's not a trade call. I'm not saying wait till $3,000 to buy. Nobody can time the market exactly. Nobody can tell you this stuff, and I'm not going to pretend I can. But my logic for it going down further is quite simple. So as Warsh drains that $6.7 trillion from the markets, the pressure just builds month after month. I don't think he's going to be able to drain the full 6.7. I'll explain that in a second. But you know, in 2011, gold dropped about 45% from its high. So 45% from the $5,600 high is around about 3K. It's also a solid psychological level, that $3,000 level. And also another thing is that it kind of tracks with the longer term floor for gold, the 200-week moving average. It's not quite at 3,000 yet, but it's climbing up to 3,000. But like I said, look, I'm not saying it's going to hit exactly $3,000. I think it's going to go below 4,000. It could reach 3,000. I'm going to be buying between those two levels. That's what I'm thinking. But the thing is, the people who bought at the very top, they're going to panic when it dumps any lower than it is now. And they're going to be selling their gold for scraps. And there's going to be a smaller group, the ones who understand what's really going on, and they'll be quietly buying that off of them. It's the same thing every cycle. Now, I'm part of the quiet group who actually buys when price gets low instead of buys when price gets high. Who are you? Are you part of that group? So the point is, I'm not scared of $3,000. I'm kind of waiting for it. But obviously, I'm going to buy anything below $4,000 because nobody can predict the exact bottom, as I've said. So now let's talk a little bit more about Kevin Warsh. What he's doing, his plans to crush gold. Should you be scared? No, because his plan's kind of stupid. I mean, Warsh wants to shrink that $6.7 trillion pile. Every chairman before him wanted to shrink that pile too. And not one of them has ever managed to do it. Not the full pile anyway. Because every single time they try to pull that money back out, something breaks. Because the whole system has been hooked on cheap money for 15 years now. I mean, imagine you could print money, right? If you could print money, you'd be hooked. Yeah, that's what the American economy is. The banks, the markets, the government itself, they all run on this printed money. Take it away and everything seizes up like an engine that's suddenly running dry, yeah? So, and this isn't a theory, by the way. We've watched this happen with our own eyes. Let me tell you a little story about 2019 because hardly anyone talks about this. I barely remember this story anyway, so I'm going to do it from memory. I'm going to try to get it right. So the Fed was quietly shrinking the balance sheet back then, and it was pretty much the exact same plan that Kevin Warsh has right now. It was going fine. It was boring, really. Even it was boring until it wasn't. I think it was one day in September. So there's this thing called the interbank market. It's what banks use to lend each other cash overnight, and that thing just seized up overnight. Borrowing costs spiked to 10% out of nowhere, which is a lot. So For a moment there, the machine that keeps the whole system moving, it just jammed up solid. And the Fed absolutely panicked. I mean, within days, they started printing money again and pumping it straight back in. So they were removing money and they started printing it and pumping it back in. And I mean, they pretended that it wasn't money printing. They gave it a fancy little name, I can't remember, but it was money printing. Everyone knew what it was. And that was them trying to drain the bath in a calm, boring time. There was no crisis anywhere. There was no crazy market anywhere. And it still blew up in their faces in a matter of weeks. And it wasn't just that time. I mean, this has happened before. And every time they've had to flip the printer back on. And gold does the exact same thing. It runs really hard. It happened after 2008. It happened again in 2020. And the pattern doesn't change. And there's a bigger reason why they always cave. Who do you think actually buys all of America's debt? I mean, I've already kind of alluded to this or talked about it. The government has to borrow trillions more every single year just to keep the lights on. Somebody has to show up and buy those bonds. For years, one of the biggest buyers has been the US itself, the Fed. They print money and then they buy their own debt with it, which is obscene. Now, Warsh wants to pull the Fed out of that game and start selling instead. So ask yourself the obvious question. If the Fed stops buying and starts dumping, who is left to soak up that $40 trillion of debt they have? China has been backing away from the US for years. Everyone's a little nervous about holding US dollars. Everyone's selling US debt right now and replacing it with gold. So if the Fed steps back and nobody big steps up, the price of that debt falls and interest rates start spiking. A spiking rate on $40 trillion of debt is one of the things that America simply cannot survive, because America is already paying roughly $1 trillion a year just to service its interest on the debt. So that means if interest rates go up, it's going to end up paying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trillion, and it can't survive that. So this is why the Fed gets dragged straight back to the printer every single time. That's the trap Warsh has been walking into. But to be fair, I think he knows this. I mean, he's not a stupid guy. I think this is just a short-term play to keep things ticking along until the midterm elections. So now you see it. Now you understand Warsh is crushing gold today, but his own plan forces the printer back on tomorrow. And when they turn that printer back on, gold is going to go to $10,000. That's the price Warsh is really sending gold to. And look, it might take years. I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight, but gold holders are patient. I mean, we can wait years. And yeah, let me be straight with you, because I'd be doing you a disservice if I wasn't. $10,000 gold means something really ugly has to happen first. I mean, a proper break of the system. My bet is that the AI bubble is going to pop and drag half the market down with it, or if not the whole market down with it, because that bubble is floating on the very same bath water that Warsh is draining, yeah? And I can't tell you when. I mean, it could be next year, it could be 3 years out. I'm betting it's going to be sooner rather than later. But this is what you have to understand about markets. Maybe we go down before the midterms hit 3K on gold, then we bounce back and gold goes on a tear to $10,000. Historically, this is one of the more likely scenarios. But maybe we stay down at $3,000 for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. That's also possible. Look, there's going to be a lot of YouTubers who tell you, do this, do that. I know where gold's going for sure, because they know people want to hear that. People want to know because it comforts them to know when the exact bottom happens, even though no one actually knows. And like I said, the reality is no one can tell us that. The only thing that we can do as smart, intelligent investors is if we think that an asset is going to appreciate over the long term, we buy it at a good price, right? That's all we can do. A price you consider cheap. For me, that's around about $3,000 to $3,800. And then you just hold it and you wait. It's the most boring part of the game, but it is the game. A lot of it is just waiting. Right? So that's what I do with my gold and silver and copper. I accumulate at a price I think is cheap and I wait. I don't buy it when I think it's expensive. And right now I think it's just a bit too expensive for my taste. But you know, I have an unhealthy amount of metals. My friends call me Magneto. So I can happily wait. If it doesn't get that low, it doesn't matter too much to me because I already have a lot of metal. But what I'm sure about is that one day we're going to see $10,000 gold. I don't know where the world's going to be at that stage because things might get pretty ugly for us to get there. But at least I'll be sitting on a large pile of gold and silver. How about you?